What's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Bleed Blue Daily Show. I am your host, Paul, and hopefully we have gotten all the technical difficulties sorted out. The show today is brought to you by State Line Co. Make sure you go to State Line Co. for all of your interesting needs. I'm going to listen. I think we got all of the audio figured out. I think we're good to go. Make sure if you're listening, you check out State Line Co. StateLineCo.shop for all of your needs, and make sure you use promo code Bleed Blue for 10% off all of your purchases. Very exciting day. Happy Halloween to everybody out there listening. It's an interesting kind of spooky overcast day here, especially around the greater Lexington area. And I am excited to be with you. We've had a little bit of technical difficulties trying to go through some stuff, rebooted everything, and I think we are okay now. On the audio side, it was really weird. Like there's a lot of interference. I don't know if it was cord mix up or stuff was interfering. I have no idea, but I'm pretty sure we have got it figured out, and we are ready to roll. You can check out also. You can see I'm wearing a pretty awesome hat here from State Line Co. It is a dark camo hat with the blue Kentucky outline. A very nice hat. They made it special for me. I think they have it out now though, where you can get it. I need the all black hat though, man. Like that's the hat that I actually need to really get things rolling. So it's a Thursday before a football game, a Thursday before the start of basketball season. Going to get into a few things. We're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming games, the schedule here, what's going on when college football. Obviously Kentucky is not having the season that we want them to have, but also we're going to look at, some of the big games that are this weekend. I'm sure everybody's not stopping watching college football just because Kentucky's not having a great season. Obviously, Kentucky takes on Tennessee this weekend. We're going to get into a few things about that game coming up. Injury report was put out last night. It's no bueno. It's going to be an interesting game. Obviously, Tennessee's doing a blackout. I hate Tennessee so much. Got a little bit. Going to go through kind of our team picks for the season. Last night we put it out on the Blue Blue Network podcast page. We put out our SEC pick. As well as our Final Four picks. So we'll get into that a little bit, talk a little bit about Halloween. We kind of a little bit talked about, nobody could understand me, so it's no big deal. We'll get into it again. Trick or treat, things that are going on within Kentucky football. You know what we have that are tricks and what do we have that are treats, kind of going into the end of the season, what we can still look forward to. Maybe do a little bit of basketball. I thought Jaden was supposed to join me. I don't know where Jaden is. So anyway, you can jump in if you would like as well and send text questions to 859-412-2090 on the Bleed Blue text line. And we are just going to get rolling now and kind of jump in anything. So today is Halloween. Obviously, if your family or your kids or anything are like mine, they are very excited about Halloween. My son has a uh, um, uh, my son has a costume he's been very much looking forward to. Woke up today, said, "Daddy, it's not Halloween. I can't wear my costume." And I was like, "No, but I'm pretty sure it is Halloween." And he's been bugging me ever since. It was probably a bad decision. I could have probably milked not getting bugged when he's going to put his costume on for probably a couple more hours. But instead, I decided to be an honest dad, and now I'm just getting bugged. So if you guys are probably like me and have kids, you've probably experienced a little bit of that today as well. Just putting out that the audio has been fixed, and we are live and moving. Also going to put this out too on the media page, just so everyone knows that we are good and live. And just there we go. Audio has been fixed. It's always an interesting time when you do live. I mean, obviously we do live radio, we do the pregame show, and that's been very interesting and a learning experience. Now, this is nothing hardly ever goes well, especially when you don't have like a producer and things like that to check everything. It's very interesting, and it really kind of sucked because there was a lot of listeners on the first time. I don't know what they were listening to. Maybe they were just laughing at the fact that I sounded like a stupid alien in a box. With the audio, but now we're fixed, and my voice is coming through in crystal clear HD. At least it was, so hopefully it's staying that way. Somebody had put in the chat, I think in the chat, you can, if you're on YouTube, you can get on the chat as well. If you're on Twitch or Facebook or Instagram, you can reply and jump into the chat. Also, you can text in 859-412-2090 on the Bleed Blue text line with any questions or comments you might have. So let's kind of just talk a little bit first about the World Series last night. Big topic of conversation right now. I don't know how many of you watched any of it, or if you tuned in last night. The Yankees were up 5-0. It looked like they were coasting to a game 6. For those of you who maybe don't know, no team in MLB history has ever forced a game 6 after being down 3-0 in World Series history. That's a little bit of a crazy stat, I think. I actually can't believe that that's something that that's happened. They look like they were well on their way to that, and then the 5th inning happened. I think the Yankees allowed 500 or 600 runs last night, and end up losing 7-6, and losing the World Series to the Dodgers in 4 games. That was one of the most epic meltdowns I think I've ever seen in sports. It starts with Aaron Judge and a routine, just kind of like looping line drive. I mean, it wasn't anything that would have been hard to catch. Takes his eye off the ball, drops it, and then the pitcher doesn't cover first base, would have gotten out of the inning up multiple runs, and the Yankees probably would have won the game. And they, we're talking about a game 6 in history in the World Series on Friday, and instead we're talking about the Dodgers winning their 2nd World Series title in 4 years, and the Yankees with an epic complete choke job. My dad is a lifelong Yankees fan. He grew up in Hackensack, New Jersey. He went to old Yankee Stadium. He's seen a lot of things. I have not talked to my father since the game ended last night. I'm not scared to, but I'm sure if I ask him about it, he's going to go on a rant and rave and say how stupid Aaron Boone is, and multiple things like that. If you're a baseball fan, you probably were a little bit in shock and awe about how that went yesterday, because you don't see epic meltdowns like that in a World Series usually. The Yankees were really hot in the beginning, and then obviously they got really cold, left a lot of runners in scoring position towards the end of the game, and there you have it. The Dodgers win. I don't know what the Yankees do going from here, to be honest with you. Obviously, Juan Soto is a free agent. Aaron Judge isn't going anywhere, but he had an absolutely terrible World Series, absolutely horrific. Outside of, I think he had one home. He had a home. They had a good game yesterday. I mean, they lost. They didn't fully lose because of him. If I'm Garrett Cole, I don't know. I don't think I slept very well last night. I mean, you were basically full on dominant and ended up losing the game, and I think he didn't get the loss. Canely comes in and walks the bases loaded. It's just absolute all systems failure for a team in the World Series like that. And it's something you don't see it very often in professional sports. A meltdown like that, you got to compare this. I mean, it's different because they weren't winning the series. I get that, but you kind of got to compare the collapse in this game to what the Falcons did against the Patriots, up 28-3, and blowing that Super Bowl. I think you got to kind of put at least in a 1-game scenario meltdown, you've got to put it into that situation. I've never seen anything like it in baseball. Obviously the Cubs in 2003, that was a little bit of a choke job, but at the same time, it was not a blowout, right? It wasn't down 5-0. And, there was one error that really blew that game open. The Yankees had 3 that allowed 5 unearned runs. So, the Dodgers are the World Series champions. Baseball is officially over. We are in the off season of baseball, and we are absolutely cranking it in all other sports. The NBA has started. Obviously, college basketball is getting ready to tip off. You've got the NHL, which I'm a massive NHL fan. You guys are probably going to start to hear me talk a lot more about hockey as the season starts to go. I'm a massive Florida Panthers fan. I was at Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals of last year, so I got to see them raise the trophy, or raise the Stanley Cup. It's the second title I've seen my team win. 2012, I got to see Kentucky win the national championship in New Orleans. That was a very very fun experience as well. It's very, very fun to see your team win a national championship. So let's in the spirit of Halloween, we will talk a little bit about Trick or Treat with the UK football program. Obviously, if you look at the season as a whole, you're going to say it's the whole thing's a trick. The season was meant to be I think a lot of people thought we would probably go on, or at least have an outside chance of making the playoffs, staring down the barrel of 4-8, 5-7. I don't think was on anybody's radar for the most part. But here we are. And so I think if you're just looking at this and without calling out entire position groups, or entire sides of the ball, offense and defense, I think that's too easy and too granular. I think if we're going to look at a trick, we got to talk about the offensive line. I think we thought that there was going to be a big improvement with the offensive line. Obviously, we brought in some SEC players from the transfer portal. Wolford comes back from Alabama, and the offense has been woeful at times when we needed it to be good. It's made key mistakes in times when we needed them not to make mistakes. You look at Georgia, the pressure off the ball that Brock probably hits Barry on, cutting across him, or it was Macklin or Barry, I forget who it was. And they probably pick up 20, 25, 30 yards. We're in field goal range with the ball, running down to potentially kick a game-winning field goal against Georgia. South Carolina, that was abysmal. That was just an all systems failure from the offensive line standpoint. Last week against Auburn, the inability to just get short yardage when we needed. So I think if you're looking an overall trick from Kentucky football perspective, I would point at the offensive line. And on the flip side, I think you're looking, when you're talking about a treat, it's, the defensive line. Outside of, the last game has been a big treat to watch. They've really done an amazing job dominating the line of scrimmage, making it hard to run on. Obviously, they're very banged up right now. There was an offensive lineman playing nose tackle against Auburn last week. You can't keep being put in positions where you're constantly on the field defending drives and getting worn out like they have been, and not expect there to be attrition. And now we've got a road game against Tennessee, and it is not looking phenomenal from the injury standpoint. The depth, the roster, and things like that. We'll get into that in a little bit. Wanted to kind of talk about this week in college football. This is going to be an interesting week. Tonight there is a game. You have Tulane against Charlotte. I think that might get a little bit more attention than normal, at least from fans around us. Summerall, a lot of people floating his name around. Obviously, we're on the train of, we're not on anybody's train. We're just in the reality of that this Stoops is not going anywhere. I did ask that question. If you guys listened to the show, I think it was yesterday. I read something about Paul. Paul Feinbaum put something out about maybe Stoops is thinking about leaving. I sent some text messages. And let's just summarize, he's going nowhere. That's basically what I was told. Now, in 4 games, can that change? Yes. But there is absolutely, from what I am told, there is no shot that Mark Stoops is not going to be the coach of Kentucky next year. Like, I was told 0%, no way. Now, we know in sports things can change very quickly from week to week. Circumstances can change. I was told may only if a certain team was to potentially come forward. It's not the team that a lot of you think it is. Um, I don't think that team would do that. Just to be honest with you. So all systems and indications are that this is the case. And I know some people on Twitter don't like that we say that, or they're saying, how much is Mark Stoops paying you and things like that. Listen, we're just telling you what we're told, right? Like, I'm not going to go out there and be like some others might want to be and say things you want to necessarily hear. I mean, it's talking about, it's fun to hypothetically, and Jade and I have done that, and we hypothetically talk about if Stoops was to leave, who we would look at, what our thoughts would be. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But I think it's disingenuous to tease the fans into thinking that anything besides Mark Stoops being the head football coach of the University of Kentucky Wildcats next year is going to be a reality. So, but I think it'll still get some more attention. I think you'll see people tweeting about it tonight, especially if you want. And I mean, look, social media is not going to stop, and fans shouldn't stop. I mean, this is an unacceptable season, and the fans should definitely demand more tonight. Tomorrow night, you've got a game. This is definitely, every game Boise State plays now has playoff implications. They're 6-1 now. They play San Diego State. An interesting game in the ACC, a noon kickoff. Miami plays Duke. Duke is 6-2. They just lost a close game to SMU, who is a top 25 team. Also, Manny Diaz comes back to the team that he coached at. He's a Miami native. That's always an interesting game. Noon, the biggest game of the day. You have Ohio State, Penn State. 6-1 Ohio State at 7-0 Penn State. Ohio State has kind of been a thorn in Penn State's ass for a long time. Ohio State needs to win that game. They spent a lot of money, and I think if they lose, Ryan Day's job, I think, is very much on the line. Oregon travels across country to play Michigan. That could be an interesting game. I think Oregon should win that game. In the SEC, you've got Florida against Georgia. Florida's now 4-3, 2-2 in the SEC. I think a lot of people would not have expected that. Georgia is a 16.5-point favorite. You would expect Georgia to coast there. Yeah. But Florida is playing better. 7:30 game. You've got Texas A&M on the road to South Carolina. Texas A&M is only favored by 2.5. You really don't know what you're going to get with South Carolina. That could be a little bit of a trap game there for Texas A&M. Could be an interesting game. Night game in Columbia is always can be a little bit difficult. Clemson goes on, or Louisville goes on the road to take Clemson. You got to like Clemson in that game. They're 10.5-point favorites. Louisville is 5-3 on the season. Could easily be 4-4. Pulled one out of their backside last week against Boston College, and Clemson is favored. And then also a night game. You got more playoff implications. This is a very big playoff implication game. You have number 18 and undefeated Pittsburgh going on the road to 7-1 SMU. SMU is favored by 7.5, and this is where the games start to really matter. I think obviously the big game of the day and what everybody's going to be really interested about and watching is going to be Ohio State, Penn State. It's very interesting. That's not a night game. Usually that's, whiteout night game, things like that. But it's at noon in Happy Valley. Ohio State is a 3.5-point favorite. It's going to be a beautiful day. It's going to be a beautiful day there. 50 degrees, sunny, perfect day for football. You got to think that this is a very interesting game for both coaches. James Franklin has been at Penn State for a lot of years now and has struggled in games like this, right? Penn State, outside of playing Michigan and Ohio State, has been very dominant. They rarely lose to teams outside of those two. And you got to wonder if the fan base gets real frustrated with him. If they lose, you've got to really, I think Ryan Day has the most pressure on him. Ohio State loses one game to Michigan, and Ohio State fans want to fire him. And it's going to be very interesting. If Ohio State loses, I think Ryan Day's job is 100% on the line here. I don't know who they go get. I mean, I think it's a little crazy. But but that's going to be a very interesting. I think if I'm looking at my trap game of the day, I definitely think it's Oregon at Michigan. I know Oregon's 14.5-point favorites, but Michigan playing at Michigan's always a little bit different. The game's it's a 3:30 game in Ann Arbor at the Big House, and I think that's probably my trap game of the day. If I'm looking at everything across the board. Now, I mean, there could be multiples, but that would probably be the one I would point to the most and say that could be a game where maybe it gets a little bit nutty. But we'll see. Very excited. I look, I'm being honest with you. I'm actually really looking forward to Kentucky not playing a home game on Saturday and being able to sit and watch football. It's one of the things about doing, radio and media and things like that you do miss a little bit more. I'm gonna basically post up and watch games all day. We're gonna do the live pregame show, but we'll probably have a TV on in the background and enjoying the game or the games. Probably have it on the laptop, have it on the TV. At an old house that I had would sit out. Well, not sit out, but had kind of the TV up mounted on a fire above the fireplace, and then had like another area where we could put a side table, and so had like a 70-inch TV up top with a game on, a 32-inch TV with a table, and then had my laptop on, would watch 3 or 4 games at a time. It was super fun. Don't get to do that as much anymore. Also, when you have 3 kids, everything is very dangerous, especially with that electronics. And my son's broken 3 TVs already, so that is something that I try not to do and make it to where it's a 4th one. So I try and keep things out of their reach as much as possible. Switching gears a little bit to basketball. I haven't seen a lot from the Mark Pope press conference today. I was not able to attend. Just a bad day to try and do stuff outside of the house. ESPN is not working the way I want it to work right now because I want to pull something up and talk about it. There we go. Any day now, ESPN. Well, nothing like going there and should the Dolphins add or subtract before the trade deadline. As a Dolphins fan, this is not a fun year for me. Obviously Tua has been hurt, but that his it's not nearly as fun to okay, here we go. So pulling up the basketball schedule. Monday, the season gets kicked off across the board. A lot of games going on across the country. Obviously, Kentucky is one of them. Just kind of shortly glancing. I'm going to go to the SEC real quick. All right, here we go. So SEC, you got Tennessee playing Gardner-Webb. You have Texas A&M at UCF, Wright State at Kentucky, North Florida at South Carolina, West Georgia at Mississippi State, Tennessee Tech at Georgia, Maryland, Eastern Shore. I have no clue. I haven't even heard of that team before. Is at Vanderbilt, Missouri at Memphis. That's probably a fun game. South Florida at Florida. That's another potentially fun game to watch. Long Island University at Ole Miss, UNC Asheville at Alabama, Lindenwood at Oklahoma, and then you have Texas taking on Ohio State at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Another fun game that could actually end up being a pretty fun game, to be honest with you. Other kind of maybe interesting games of note, just looking around. Morehead takes on Louisville at the Yum Center. And that's about it, I think, from the games a lot of people are really just going to care about. So, I mean, there's a ton of basketball on Monday, which is very exciting. If you love basketball, you're going to get your fill. And the games start at 11 a.m. on Monday. So if you're off or you're at work and you have ESPN Plus and you're able to watch, you're going to be able to get your fill of basketball starting at 11. There's games from 11 all the way to 10 on Monday. That's a pretty big slate of basketball to start the season. It's going to be really exciting to watch. And that leads me into talking about our picks. So our team picked um their SEC champion, and by SEC champion we're talking about tournament, and then our final four. So going through, I'll just kind of go in no specific order here. Well, I'll go in order of what the picture or what the picks were. So Joe Adams has the SEC champion as Alabama. He has Houston, Iowa State, Alabama, and UConn in his final four. Selena had picked Kentucky to win the SEC. Her final four is Kansas, UConn, North Carolina, and Kentucky. I have Alabama winning the SEC with UConn, Houston, Alabama, and Kentucky in my final four. Kendall also has Alabama. I'm just going to put it this way: everyone else picked Alabama for the SEC. Selena was the only one on the team that fix my microphone there. It was the only one on the team that had Kentucky picked Kentucky to win the SEC. Kendall has Duke, Kansas, Creighton, and Alabama. Rando, his final four is Houston, Duke, Kentucky, and Alabama. Casey has Auburn, Kentucky, Kansas, and UConn. And Jaden finished us out with Baylor, Kansas, North Carolina, and Alabama. So there's a recurring theme here for the SEC. There's a recurring theme here for the Final Four. A lot of Alabama love here. I think most of the team and a lot of people even around will tell you they believe that that Alabama is probably the number one team in the country. They're probably the best team. I have a hard time believing in Kansas. I'm just going to be honest from that perspective. I don't know what it is about Kansas, but it's just something that I have a hard time believing that they're going to be consistent enough to get to a Final Four. I do like Houston. I think Houston brings a lot back. If you look at the trends that are going through college basketball right now, you have experience, you have seniors, and I think Houston has a lot of that. I think that's something that's going to be talented. And then look, UConn is going to do it until UConn doesn't, and that's my belief. Until someone takes UConn out, I'm going to still think that they're going to keep going because they got a really good recruiting class coming in. They got good transfers and they got a good roster. So they have probably the best coach in college basketball. So that I think that's a good pick. And then sporadically, just looking at teams that were consistently picked, Kentucky was 4 times for the Final Four. Alabama was 5. I think there's only one person who didn't have Alabama actually in their Final Four. Auburn once, Iowa State once. Joe is very high on Iowa State. He thinks we're very much sleeping on them. I tend to think from a basketball standpoint, okay, there's been a lot of teams out there in college basketball that have been very good during the regular season. They get into the tournament and they lose. Iowa State's one of those teams. Kansas recently has been kind of one of those teams. Texas A&M, Marquette, Creighton, Purdue, obviously outside of last season. When you get consistently and you start to see in the tournament, a lot of the same teams keep popping up. Obviously Alabama, I think, was in that until last year, but Alabama's roster is so good. Nate Oates is an incredible coach too, so you really got to like them kind of moving that. If you look at the AP top 25, just real quickly going through the top 10, Kansas, Alabama, UConn, Houston, Iowa, Gonzaga, Duke, Baylor, North Carolina, and Arizona round out the top 10. Kentucky comes in 23rd in both the coaches and the AP. If I look at if you look at the top 10, most of us have 2 to 3 from the top 10 that are going to go to that we're predicting going to the Final Four. I think that that's probably even a little much. I wanted to pick Baylor. I'll just be honest. I was really indecisive on picking Baylor over Houston. I believe in Baylor a little, or in Houston a little bit more, just because I think that they're a little bit more stacked top to bottom. And how last year ended, I think they've got a little bit more of a chip on their shoulder going into the season. Obviously you look at some other teams down there who can make some noise. Texas, some people are very high on Indiana this year, giving them a chance to be in the Final Four. Florida should have a very decent roster. You've got Rutgers. I would say don't sleep on St. John's. I mean, I would just say that. Like, I think St. John's is a pretty talented roster. I'm not saying Final Four, but I just wouldn't sleep on them overall as a team. Marquette's always good. Shaka Smart has Marquette in a good place, but they've, again, in the tournament, for whatever reason, it's not been able to put it together. I know it only takes once, and the draw really matters and where you play and things like that. But I think Kentucky's team and how it's built, is going to be very, very good in March. I think that there's going to be I think there's going to be some hiccups. And there's just going to be a couple things that just aren't going to go the way we want it to go at certain points in the season. But I think with the collective of this group and how experienced it is, I think that's what you want to see when you get into March, right? Also, I think last year one team had a freshman that started. I don't think you look at 5 stars. There wasn't a lot of 5 stars that were playing. So the complexion of what Kentucky is doing is the complexion of a roster that has been very successful in the tournament. You look at UConn and what they've been able to do. I think their roster is shaped very, very well. You would think Kansas would be in that realm. I have a hard time. I just have a hard time with the players they have, thinking that that's going to be a team. I think they're going to be dominant in the regular season, but I just have a hard time looking at that roster and going, like, I don't feel like Kansas is mentally tough. I feel like Houston the whole Houston team has a bunch of dogs on them. Like Houston are a team that's terrible English. Houston is a team that I think is kind of scary overall, and how they play. They're tenacious on the defensive side of the ball. They have guys that can go get buckets. I think if there's a weakness from a Kentucky standpoint, it's a defensive intensity. Now maybe that changes as the season goes. They learn to play together. You just don't know from that perspective. If Kentucky can be a very good defensive team, that this team can win the national title with how good they are on offense. I think Baylor's got a very good team. But Baylor with Scott Drew is the one thing that a lot of the Kentucky fans liked about Scott Drew. It's things they didn't like about Scott Drew was the aspect that Kentucky, or that the tournament, has been a little bit of an Achilles heel for him. Obviously, they've gotten bounced a little early in the last couple of years outside of the COVID season, which they won the national title. Look, you got to give Scott Drew credit on that one. Baylor is not a traditional basketball powerhouse. They were very good that season. They won. Gonzaga. I actually am a little surprised no one in our group picked Gonzaga. I think that the consensus is Gonzaga is probably the most overrated top 10 team. I think in the top 15, I think Tennessee is very overrated, being in the top, being ranked 12th. I would not put Tennessee 12. I would not have put Kentucky 23. I think that's fair. I would have ranked Kentucky probably more like 15 to 17. If you're looking at teams that are ranked above them, I wouldn't necessarily say Florida, Cincinnati, and UCLA are better than them. I would say Indiana has a lot of talent, but I don't know. But yeah, you never know. You never know what's going to happen, especially when it comes to tournament time. But just from the SEC standpoint, I think a lot of teams are going to be very bunched. It's going to be very competitive. I think it's going to be a fun year in the SEC. When you look at the SEC right now, I think we got 5 or 6 teams in the top 25. Maybe it's more. Ole Miss is, well, no, you got Ole Miss is in both polls. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, I lied. There's way more than that. Nine teams in the SEC ranked in the top 25. So uh so yeah, that's good. That means that this is going to be a very competitive league. I think we all remember when the SEC was not that competitive when it comes to college basketball, and it was very top heavy. And there was a knock on the fact that the SEC was weak, and it was the schedule. But I don't, it's not going to go through that way. I mean, Kentucky's got a lot of ranked teams that they got to go through this year. They're going to be very battle tested. I think the SEC's got a chance to be very, very good. Do very good in the tournament as well because of how battle tested it is. I'm trying to do this kind of on the fly. I had something pulled up and then I had to restart the computer and some of it got moved. So I'm trying to kind of just go out. If you look at teams by conference, so you have the Big 12 has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams. Is 6 teams in the top 25, and the SEC has 9. I'm pretty sure the Big 12, yeah, because the ACC does not have a lot of top 25 teams. I think they have Duke and North Carolina, and that is it. Even the Big 10 doesn't have a lot of top 25 teams this year, which is kind of I actually don't think that's terribly surprising. The Big 10 in basketball has just been not very good. Purdue's their highest, is the Big 10's highest ranked team at 14. And you got Purdue, Indiana, and that's it. I mean, I remember when, everybody was talking about the Big 10 being the dominant basketball conference. And now you look at it and it's the Big 12 and it's the Big 12 and the SEC are the two big dogs when it comes out. Even the ACC, the ACC only has 2 ranked teams, I believe, in the top 25, and 2 of those are in the top 10. Very top heavy leagues, and obviously things will change. Teams will kind of come out of nowhere as well. I mean, we see it every single year, right? Like it's the way it's going to be. But I think from a college basketball standpoint, it's going to be very interesting, and seeing if the dominance holds through the season, but also through the tournament. I think logically, the SEC basketball wise probably has, out of the 9, I'd say 5 or 6 are legit Final Four contenders. Probably more on the 5 side. If I was going to name them, I would say Alabama, Auburn, Texas A&M, Kentucky, and I'll say Texas. I don't think Tennessee is a legit Final Four contender. I don't. They've never been there. This team does not impress me at all. I'm sorry. Like this Tennessee team does not impress me whatsoever. I think Texas A&M can be very, very good. I don't think Arkansas is going to be what a lot of people think they're going to be. I've seen some people having them like their top 3 or 4, which I think is just an asinine way of just either, you're just trolling or absolutely know nothing about basketball if you think Arkansas is going to be a top 5 team, regardless of what they did in a glorified exhibition game against a team that was down 2 starters and another significant contributor, playing a home game where they were acting like it was, the Final Four. So, throw that baby out with the bathwater if I'm being honest. So, yeah. So college basketball Monday, football. We've got college football on Saturday, and we got college football actually tonight and tomorrow. But this is where the season from covering UK athletics really starts to heat up. Obviously football is a lot to talk about. And kind of speaking and starting to finish things up, because we had a lot of technical difficulties and things like that, so we probably won't go as long as we normally do. looking at Kentucky's injury report, it is not ideal going into a road game against Tennessee. Maxwell Harrison still out with that shoulder infection. Jansen Dunn is out again. Obviously, Darian Henry Young's been out all season. Gerald Mincy is out again. Chip Trainum is out again. At this point, you gotta. At this point with Chip, I think you've got to just not play him. I mean, or maybe one or two more games and you have a redshirt option, because that is just not. I mean, there's just no point. Steven Souls Jr. is out. Jordan Dingle is out. Derek Jackson is out. That is a big loss. I think above everything, Derek Jackson's a massive loss for Kentucky because of his leadership. Quashid Scott out. Quashid Scott is doubtful. DJ Waller is questionable. Javant Brown is also questionable. Dan Walker is probable. He's been practicing. They interviewed him yesterday, so I'm assuming unless there's a big setback, he's good to go. Tavian Gadsden probable, and Demisumo Karnbe is also probable. On the defensive side of the ball, and I also forgot. I think I passed over JJ Weaver, also a massive loss for the Kentucky defense. So Kentucky's going to be very thin, especially from a linebacker, defensive back, and JJ Weaver with what he brings in his leadership to the table. Going on the road, I think if there's a saving grace, that this has been a Tennessee team that has not been very good offensively. This has been a Tennessee and Kentucky are kind of a mirror a little bit of each other. Tennessee has won their close games. Kentucky has lost all their close games. I don't, a lot of people, Tennessee's going to beat us by 1,000. I don't see that happening. I'm not saying it's impossible. I mean, anything's possible. Especially with Kentucky and how they've been playing and kind of how weak they are. Maybe not weak, mentally weak or fatigued they are. I don't want to say weak. I think that's a bad way to put it. Mentally fatigued. I think physically fatigued. I would like our chances a lot more if this was coming off a bye week. I think Kentucky can win this game. I don't think it's probable. I think Tennessee's probably the most overrated team in the top 10 in college football. But obviously, like it's. I mean, you're going on the road, and Tennessee has always had an uncanny knack of putting it all together, even when they suck against Kentucky. Maybe look, is Kentucky due to have an uncanny game where when they suck, put it all again, all together against Tennessee? Absolutely, they are. They're due one. Well, whether it happens or not, I don't know. I have a hard time believing that. But we'll be watching and hoping. Look, I think a win against Tennessee and this fan base, I wouldn't say that everyone's back on board, but boy, does it help a lot. Jade and I talked yesterday that if Kentucky can get a win against Louisville and a win against Tennessee, I think it helps. But time will tell. So that's all I got for today, guys. Wanted to kind of do a little bit more, but the 30 minutes behind on the show start with the technical difficulties did not help things. So appreciate everyone logging on. Make sure you give all of our social media a follow. Make sure you check out State Line Co. At statelineco.shop and use promo code BLEEBLUE for 10% off all of your State Line Co. products. We'll see everyone tomorrow. We'll give you guys some thoughts about a little bit more in depth about the football game coming up. Talk about that. We were going to do throwback stuff, but I don't know. I just think we've went. It's lost the luster to do the throwback stuff. We'll probably talk about it tomorrow a little bit with when